hydrochloroquine, he'll tell you more about this, was banned in Wyoming. Banned
Wow.
by our governor, banned by that tyrant. Saves lives, he's going to tell you more about it. Anthony?
It's a big crowd here. I don't know where to start, but I'm going to start by pointing to that hospital right there. 2007. Came down with an illness, and we took her to the doctor. The biggest thing was that when she was at home, you couldn't tell when she was sitting.
Thank you.
When she walked to the car to go to the doctor's office, there was a big difference. Like this pneumonia had gotten really bad. So it turned into a. Can't hear me. They can't hear me, so I guess I got to speak louder. Is that better?
Yeah. Thank you.
In the back, can you hear me? So what happened was, it was a hospital, a ride over to this hospital, and we weren't there but 8 hours, and we had to pull her out of that hospital because they didn't know what was going on with her. They just had her with a regular oxygen mask, and they really weren't treating the problem. So we took an ambulance ride down to Children's Hospital, and I'm just going to tell the condensed version. Some of you know this story if you've been following me online. But what happened was they came in the room and said, we're going to give her something that's not conventional for what she has. It's to treat malaria. And I said, well, why are we going to give her something like that? And they said, because she has a storm in her body, and we have to calm that storm. And I spent 8 days captive with my wife and my daughter, and every time they said something, I would write it down. I'd go to my computer and I would look and see if what they said was true. So when I saw this happen, and by the way, she was low on vitamin D, so she had a inflammatory response to a virus. And I'll tell you one more thing about this before I move on, is that they came to the room and said that she has something in her blood. Has she been around any reptiles? And we said, no, we have horses and chickens. We don't have reptiles, and I don't let her, play with snakes or any of that. And they said, no, it's definitely reptilian. And look, before we left the hospital, the Denver Disease Control had to come and ask the same questions about reptiles. I mean, it's definitely similar in the respect that it was some kind of animal virus that crossed into my daughter's bloodstream. And then she had this cytokine storm. And this is a storm where the immune system, it sends out something called cytokine into your body, and that is a signaling response. And what happens, the body doesn't respond properly, and it just keeps that cytokine releasing, and it centers in your lungs and in your heart. And if you notice the guy that just died recently, the congressman-elect, 11 days from the time that he was tested, and he died of what they said was thrombosis in the lungs. So basically, when you get sepsis, and my daughter had sepsis as well, they have to treat that. The bacteria builds up in the blood. So to fast forward, when I saw this stuff happening with this COVID, it just rung as the same thing. The same thing is happening, this cytokine storm. And I've been very vocal about it to the point where I've addressed the governor when we had meetings. I asked, do we have hydroxychloroquine in the state? And I was told to go look at a page on the medical board saying how we can't prescribe it. So understand, it started to be politicized by our governor. It is criminal. It's a crime on our humanity, on who we are, on doctors. Listen, I've had calls from people all around the state because they've seen my postings and wanted to know where do they go to the doctor to get treated. That's not the America that we should have, where doctors have to hide and secrecy and do things. I mean, people, we've had 438 people die. Look, I'll tell you, there's some of those people, and not hold their death dear, but some of those people had other ailments that brought them down. But there probably are a huge number of those people that would have lived with early treatment.
Yes.
Wyoming could have led. They could have led the country instead of following the rest of the country into the sewer, because what they did. Listen, New York, what they did, the way they treated people in nursing homes, the way those people were just shuffled in and left to die, we followed that lead. Instead of doing something to help people, it just doesn't make sense. So look, I want to say something about, there was a book written on the cytokine storm syndrome. And the reason I'm going to talk about this, because look, I'm sure there's a lot of people here that the facts are boring. But the media is going to say, like they said the last time I talked about studies, I talked about a study in Bulgaria where a hospital system that has 7 hospitals tested hydroxychloroquine and zinc to use as a preventative measure, and it worked. And in going forward to 2021, they're using that in their hospital system to prevent their staff from getting it. And the reason that the zinc comes into play is because the hydroxychloroquine is a zinc ionophore. That means it allows the zinc to get in the cell. And you can Google this and look at medical papers. You can see this stuff. When my daughter became sick, and I Googled this stuff myself when the doctors were telling me things, what I found was that they knew this because of what happened in the 2003 SARS event. They knew that the people that took hydroxychloroquine were bypassed these storms, the cytokine storm. And so I'm going to bring this up, and just so it's on the record for the fake media. Because they won't report the truth.
That's right.
Yep.
They don't.
Journalism means they can look at it themselves and they can find the information that I'm telling them. So, to the media, I'm telling you to look up a doctor. His name is Randy Cron. He wrote a book on the cytokine storm. He's talked about this repeatedly. Prior to 2017, that's how I found it. Look, he talks about it. Up to 15% of the population are going to get the cytokine storm. He talks about the China event, and I've got it highlighted right here in this paper. It says, from reading the literature primarily coming out of China, many of the severely ill coronavirus infected patients appear to have the clinical and laboratory features of a cytokine storm syndrome, or CSS, which is frequently fatal. This document here that I'm reading from was November 1st, 2019 that they're citing him in. So this is this article here. There's another one here that's more recent, March 16, 2020. He says, don't forget the host in treating this disease. So he goes on to talk about how he gets calls all the time from all over the country. This guy, and people say to me, oh, well, why should we listen to you, Bouchard? You don't have a degree. Damn right I don't. But this guy's got a half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
That's why I'm listening to him.
Yeah.
That's logic.
So, look, here's what's so important here. None of you can take the health officer to court. None of you. And if you did, the court would tell you that you have no standing and that you have an election box to handle this. The problem is the health officer isn't elected. This whole process is criminal. So, look, I'm going to tell you that this health officer should resign. This what's
Yep.
happening on this health thing is criminal. People need to start calling the governor's office and tell him to have her resign, or have her slip that paper across the desk. She should be gone. Put one of our doctors that do treat, and there are doctors in Wyoming that are treating using hydroxychloroquine, and there are more and more people out there that know this themselves, that experience this themselves. The emperor wears no clothes. That's what's going on, folks. So hey, I appreciate everybody being here, and I do want to call out the media one more time. Look it up. Cytokine storm. That's what's killing people. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bouchard. Appreciate that. Hey,